Okay, we're gonna pot up this rose bush. It's a rose bush that I have grown from a cutting, and I just had it growing out in the yard, and I've decided to go ahead and bonsai it. So we're going to get that all squared away, and if I survive the heat, we'll have something good going on here. I've decided I want to have a good bit of organic material in this, so I've got some peat, some pine bark, and my standard bonsai mix, and I'm just adding the extra organic material to it. In this area, it gets really hot in the summertime, and things tend to dry out a lot faster. This is actually my first time trying to create a rose bonsai, and this is what I'm going to do to attempt to encourage the plant to grow and to thrive. And this is basically on a take of my understanding of how the rose plant does in this area. So again, I've got this, it's pretty loose, but it has that extra organic material in it to hold the plant and to help it thrive. I'm going to add a little bit of soil to it also. Basically, it's a little bit of composted cow manure, a little bit of topsoil, you know, the sand and all of that. So again, usually I add some slow release fertilizer to my plants, but again, a lot of this is experimentation, and I'm mixing this well just to make sure everything is very well distributed. And I get a lot of oak leaves falling around here. I've got lots of oak trees, so it kind of falls into my materials. I'm going to install my screen at the bottom of the pot, and just putting down a good layer. A good layer of the material. And this is the soil that I'm not going to use. And I'm sure you see a part of this plant in the shot, and you're wondering what this plant is. Well, that's a treat for a little bit later. All right, I'm going to unpot this little jewel right now. And as you can see, lots of roots, lots of good growing roots. In the culture of doing a rose for a bonsai, generally speaking, it's not the trunk or the stems that's used for the bonsai. It is the roots. So all of this was below ground, and I dug it up and let it grow in the ground for a period of time. And then I finally dug it from the ground and grew it in that pot for a time period, you know. And it's like, well, when I get around to it, I'll get around to it. I just use sticks from different trees. That's a that is a lantana. That's a piece of crepe myrtle. But if you use material from your garden in your yard like that, you still need to disinfect it. So, you know, fungicide, fire torch, bleach, because you don't want to spread any pathogens. And I'm going to just work this. Typically you work from the top down and so forth, but I want to expose the bottom roots, exposed from the bottom up, to see what I've got. I'm working around the base of this. And of course you'll see the new roots breaking off. And I'm trying to get into this. That is a substantial root and trunk base now, so I can handle this. And this soil is primarily the soil that was around the plant as it was growing. And so now this is basically the first time it's really going to be converted for bonsai, other than having the roots cut when I dug it. This plant has not been wired or given any special consideration. And I'm digging right in the center of this to loosen up that soil. And the plant has been fertilized with slow release fertilizer. And even though you see me hitting this, I'm not really thrusting my tool into the roots. I just want those roots to shake loose. And now I'm going to bring down the top mass to expose more of the roots here. Well, there's nothing substantially extended below the plant as you see it there. So this is pretty much going to be it. Now, just so you'll know, if I had another 5 years or so that I want to bother with this, I would put this in a deep pot, and these roots would be suspended through that pot as such. So it would be a deeper pot, and this would be the bottom of the soil, and all of this would be up. So all of this root mass would grow thicker and fuller over time. All right, so like I said, you're probably wondering what this is. And I'll clean that up in a little bit. So here we go. I'm going to clean this off of my work area, and then I'll go ahead and finish installing the tree in its new pot. This plant is a purple single petal, or single petal rose, and I mean, it is a lovely thing. I got this from what used to be a motel at the end of this street that had a sandwich shop, and it covered the whole side of the building. You're talking probably 12 feet high and 30 feet on this one wall, and it was massive. And I asked the proprietor for a piece of this, and of all of that wall of roses, he gave me probably, I think, 2 little pieces about 4 to 6 inches, just about like that, and that was it. And so I thanked him. I thought about it, and it's like, oh well, when time comes, I'll have as much as I want and even more. So I'm not going to begrudge him for being cheap and stingy. And so I took what he gave me and went on my way. The whole affair is demolished now, and they have a business, or someone started a business down there that is altogether different from okay. Here's my front. That's my viewing area. And as I say, you got to make a compromise. Whether you're Nursery, and pretty much you start from the Nursery and you work the plant in from there. But that said, the Nursery, the roots, I can live with this being right here in front. And what I'll do eventually is stick a rock in there somewhere to kind of distract from this, but to add to the plant overall. Because I'm not going to be cutting any more of these roots. I know that already. I'm just at the place where it's not practical to do that. And so this is it. As the producer says, this is it. The show goes on from here. All right, so I've got my setup. And like I said, usually I throw in some slow release fertilizer, but it is really early in the season, and though I have some growth, some activity, it's really early, so I don't want to add the fertilizer just yet. And again, you have to know your own growing area, develop your own style and technique. I've been growing plants pretty much all my life, you know, one way or the other. You know, while everybody else around me were asking, can you take cantaloupe seeds or tomato seeds out of a store-bought plant and plant it? And everybody's saying, no, you can't. And I'm saying, why not? It's a seed. You know, so I wasn't afraid of growing things. I would take the collard green stalks and get those to root and regrow the collard green from them. I've been doing this for years and years, and now I'm just now seeing people on the internet or in gardening programs talk about reusing the bases of your celery stalk, the base of your carrot, or the crown of your carrot, and reusing onions, you know, the onions that are going bad a little bit, or after you cut the base off the onions where the root is. You know, you can regrow almost any plant, and if you have the technology, you can regrow any plant from any part of that plant. If you know what you're doing, if you understand it, and if you're willing to experiment. All right. And now I'm just making sure that I've got good soil fill in all of the spaces in this pot. This planting is relatively simple because all of the roots are fine feeder roots, and once I had the base established for the planting, the roots are pretty much going to make contact. I have just a few places of concern, like this root right here. There's a nice, fresh, young, growing feeder root that's in there that I want to retain, so I'm concerned about that spot. And then the fill, the backfill in the upper areas here. But other than that, this is almost like potting a house plant in this case. So, and I'm going around the edges to make sure that I have good fill. Making sure I have great contact in all of the places that I put the soil. This rose bush is probably from one of the cuttings that I started. It's probably 12, 15 years old. I would take cuttings and stick them certain places around the yard, and you know, of course I'd offer people cuttings or small plants. In fact, I used to sell these out of my plant nursery, and then the day came that the big stores came in and started selling plants. Not only that, the local grocery stores, some are name brand, the hardware stores, everybody started selling plants. And so it's like I need to find me a niche, because I'm always going to sell plants, grow plants for sure. Sell plants, well, that's optional, but I'm always going to grow plants, and that's just the way that's going to be. So I started with bonsai. I mean, I was still in the military at the time. I started with a few coral bell azaleas. Picked up a juniper here or there. And of course I was buying and selling plants anyway. So I had access to liners, full-grown nursery stock. And it wasn't a fearful thing to deal with the plants. All right. Other than watering that in and doing some trim work, I'm going to take my power tool and carve on this part. Whether it's alive or dead doesn't matter, but I'm going to carve in there. This branch is on the back side here, and that's leading up, so that's a nice effect. And like I said, eventually I'll get a rock and either stick it in here to accent that, or place it back here underneath the trunk. But again, single leaf purple rose. Some people call it a homestead rose. You know, the sad thing about it is it only blooms once a season. But the good thing about it is it's so beautiful that once in a season is all worth it. And it's really a prolific grower, simple to care for, easy to deal with. You might be wondering what this plant is in part of your shot there. Well, I won't bother you with the noise of a grinder tearing away at this thing, but maybe you can see that, and that's what's important. That's quick and easy. The plant itself, free from a cutting. I've grown that probably 12 years or so. I dug it from the ground, raised it up to create a trunk for them, and here I am potting it, and I'll get it watered in with some B1 in the water, and I'll stick it back outside. Our winter time right now is vacillating between 60 degrees in the daytime, and right now we're going to have highs in the 40s and 50s. It rained today. The plant here was outside, so it got wet. But this plant, which you might be wondering what it is, has been inside of this greenhouse for probably a week now since I potted it up. And I'm just wiping the pot off right now because I had it soaking, and it just had some floater material on it. But to keep you from being in suspense anymore, because I know you're wondering what this plant is in your shot, this dead looking plant. Well, my friends, I'll tell you what that plant is. Furthermore, I'll show you what that plant is, that dead plant in the shot. That is a Weigela. That's right, it's a pink Weigela. And that pot right there is 15 inches. So you can see that's a pretty sizable trunk on this Weigela. As a matter of fact, let's do some measuring here. Okay. That caliper, from the sharp point of that measuring deal on the back side, up there, from there to just about the end of that, where the that right there, that's 6 inches. So that trunk, the base of that is about 6 inches. Okay, and you can see that. And right now I have already done some carving in that area, carving in there. This I cut down, and that I cut back also, and I carved those out because I didn't want it up here. And you can see I carved on that. And from the soil, that's about 18 inches, 20 inches from the soil to the top of that. And again, that extends out probably 12 inches or so. And my main feature is this armature this way and the part in the back. This part I may bring down, but for this season I'm going to let it grow and see what breaks back along the trunk. Now, just not very good with this close-up, but I do have buds right there breaking back on the trunk. There's a node right there on the main trunk, and I'm hoping that something develops in this area. If I do decide to bring the height of this down, this will be the area that I'm looking at to begin the new apex. So from here up we'll have more carving, but on the straight on the back side, which follows laterally with the pot, there's a bud right there, and you can see buds on the smaller stems are exploding right now. This is almost in leaf. Okay, so yep, that's about a 14-inch pot. So anyway, so that's what that is, pink Weigela. And I just, a number of years ago, I went down to my local post office and I saw it there, so I took a cutting, you know, the typical 6-inch piece like that, little stems. And these are pieces of cuttings from that same plant. These were uprights on it that I cut back and made other plant from. That is a pomegranate, and I will be dividing this plant into at least 3 more pieces. I'm going to air layer this part off here, and that to the base will be the new main trunk. This part over here, which was originally the main trunk when I bought the plant, but that sucker came up and took over, and this plant has had fruit on it. So I'll take this part, 1, 2, 3. So I'll have to do 2 air layers to get this out. These are more of the Weigela bits and pieces, and I just took cuttings and stuck them in pots, and now I've repotted them. On the right over there, Hall's honeysuckle, or your Japanese honeysuckles, and that's a Weigela. That's a Weigela. And this I really like. It's very straight. That's a Weigela also. And that is a Weigela. All of that came from the same plant, out of the same pot. So when I broke the root apart, or took the soil off of the roots, some of these were just intertwined in there and they came out relatively freely. This one piece, the straight piece here, I took it out back in August or September. I took it out of the pot and planted it in its own pot for, until last week. So for several months it was on its own growing, and they're all shooting out new growth right now. They're sprouting back, putting out greenery in some cases right there. You see the leaf right there. Right there, that stem is off of this Weigela here. And you can see the growth there. These can be outside, but when I was working, I didn't feel like carrying them outside at the time, so I just left them in there. And that's a wild grapevine that I cleaned the other day, and I did a little grinding on it, so that's that. But excuse me, that Weigela right there, you can say it, it's awesome. It is awesome. And since we're out and about, I just picked these up the other day. They're bald cypress, and I got them bare rooted, so I potted them up. There's B1 in that water, and that's where they'll stay. If they survive, then I'll let them grow until next year the way they are. But they were pretty much dug up with a front end loader, so the trunk is split and damaged and scarred. But that's more better for the character and the design of the plant. That green maple right there is a big old 1-inch cutting that I took off of a plant that I just did work on the other day. Bunches of crepe myrtles. And the rain has done them well. This right here, this crepe myrtle, awesome. Yep, that's just awesome. From that spot all the way down was root under the ground. I had been hacking the tree down for years. More crepe myrtles, they're doing well. I can see bud swelling on that. And I finally dug that big crepe myrtle up one weekend, and more crepe myrtles, just more crepe myrtles. Just rooted cuttings in most cases. And so I regrew that large crepe myrtle over several years in a pot, and I finally got around to potting it up, especially since I just picked up a bunch of decent pots. And camellia, I just showed you a pyracantha firethorn from an air layer, that right there. And this is a Japanese green maple that I recently potted up. So I potted this up the day before yesterday, and that is Japanese green maple, and this is about a week old. That was an air layer that I grew in the ground after I took it off of the tree, and lots of character, lots of potential. The trunk right there can be a tree on its own. This could be air layered off and create something. A lot of potential here. A lot of extended long growth. So I'm waiting to see what direction I really want to take with that. But you know, I can see several tree designs in here, including this, the way it is, just to have a lot of top canopy and to have an unusual design. A trident maple, and I'm hoping to make this into a real nice tree on its own. But I've got lots of root work to do on that little jewel. and bottle brush. And there we have root over rock oak tree, trident maple, root over rock, and these are from seedlings, and that was an air layer Japanese green maple. I kind of repotted it recently, and I used the black lava rock, and these two are kind of like in my favorite category now for the size, because you know it's like you got so many favorites, so you have to put them in classes. And this thing, I'm going to figure out what I want to do with it. But this right here is an air layer off of a Japanese green maple, and it's pretty sizable, you know, I would say. My caliper is wacky here. Yep. So let's see. We got just under 3 inches. And if you measure this way across there, that's more than 4 inches. Yep. Yep, just under 3 inches. 3 3/4 thereabouts. A Japanese green maple in that red pot. That was an air layer that I recently wired and potted. Nice trunk, about 2 inches. Yep, right at 2 inches. And Japanese green maple with exposed roots, partially exposed anyway, and some good movement in it. Nice upper branching. And this rock planting, Japanese green maple with a volunteer oak tree in the planting. So I've recently planted this on the rock. The oak tree was a self-starter in the pot this maple was growing in, so I just left it. Another oak tree. So that is, let's see, I think I've just potted, yep. How about that right there? Tanuki Shimpaku. That thing is growing like gangbusters. Very impressive. I don't know if this is really going to turn out nice, but this Japanese green mound juniper that I started from a cutting, and I have, let me see, I've grown it let's see if I can get a good shot of this. Yeah, that's okay. Yep. So I like that. It's still in the development stage, but so much character even from the beginning. I like it. I like it a lot. So But anyway, this is what I was wanting to show you. I potted this Japanese green maple up yesterday. I had it regrowing in the ground over several years, and I've cut the top back, and I was planning on doing some wiring on the branches today, so we'll see how that goes. And this is a Weigela root over rock, and I think that's come out pretty nice to the degree that it is. The rain washed away some of the soil around the, I guess, in the root area at the base just above the pot line in that area, which I left on purpose to give the roots a chance to harden off on their own after I placed it in that pot, and so that'll give it more time to be exposed, you know, on a gradual basis. And that's a little holly that I'm doing as a shohin or a mame. It was just a stump someone dug up. Well, they cut it back and was getting ready to kill the stump even, and so I took it and air layer Japanese green maple, and that's been developing for the past 4 years. I think I only put it in that pot a year and a half, 2 years ago. But anyway, some of the latest, and to me perhaps greatest, plants around here. Exposed root trident maple with the rock stuck in the trunk. But anyway, the rain is coming back this way. I have to clean up my mess next door and get that plant watered in. So there you have it, a Weigela from a cutting and a pot up of a homestead rose, purple single petal flowering, once flowering rose, and it's beautiful. If you ever find one, you'll be amazed at the color. All right, have a good day.